o te whānau tikau, ko te bi tikau taku ingoa. I actually don't whakapapa here, but my children do. I am very much a member of Ōnuku and have been managing, I've been their environmental manager now and advisor for 12 years. Professionally, I'm a landscape architect and urban designer. I have worn many hats over the years, but I have to say the work that we're doing here is by far the most significant, I believe. And yeah, so I want to take you on a bit of a journey. So Te Kore a Te Ko is a program that we've been working on now for a couple of years, and I just want to say, without the support of the Wai Connection, there's no way that we would be where we are within our program. What we have been striving to do, and particularly this lady over here, Courtney, what we've been striving to do is to create a solid foundation on which to then embark upon both climate change adaptation, mitigation, and also catchment planning to support biodiversity outcomes. So, without further ado, so Te Kore a Te Ko is a name that is inspired by our past. It reaches back into our origin stories and gives voice to our special connection to the whenua and the moana. As we stand here, you can see across, you all will be familiar with the story of Rākauhautu, perhaps, maybe not, we've got a lot of North Islanders here. Te Pātaka o Rākauhautu is the name of the Banks Peninsula, and it really represents Rākauhautu, the famed Waitaha ancestor. When he voyaged to this part of the world, he clearly identified that this area was abundant, hence its name Te Pātaka o Rākauhautu. It's a food storehouse of Rākauhautu. There was native forest, right down to the water's edge, abundant with manu. We had a harbour that was rich and abundant. So it became the settlement of many, there were numerous settlements around this harbour. So today our aspiration is really just that, to have an abundance of mahanga kai once again, to support our whānau, to support our communities. So tangata whenua, as you've heard today, this is the home of Ngāti Erakihu and Ngāi Tārewa, as represented by Ōnuku. And the role and responsibility of Ōnuku is to act as kaitiaki over these lands and to be active within the environmental management of their takiwa. And there's a few of us that have literally just come back from Waitangi. We were up there for the New Zealand Parks Leadership Forum. Niall was there, the two of us, as well as Kiki, who was supposed to be here, by the way. And what we learnt, and we're hoping that today is going to be a bit, or the next few days will be similar for you all, is just what the importance of sharing your stories, your processes, the way in which you're managing your takiwa, the way in which you're working with iwi hapu, and the various initiatives. So everyone's doing things differently, but we came away thinking, gosh, we're doing okay, but there's so many other things that we can do better. So I guess that's really what this is about, sharing what we're doing and learning from each other. So this is where we're at right now. I mean, Ōnuku is located on the shores of Akaroa Harbour, and I won't go into any more detail. You've kind of got that. You got that kōrero during the pōwhiri. And the harbour holds a multiplicity of cultural values, including the former occupation sites, kaimoana, wahitapu sites, taonga species, native vegetation, freshwater streams, so on and so forth. And you'll see there the po to my hara, that po represents to my hara nui, who was one of the main Ngāi chiefs of this area, and this site here, Takapūneke, is one of those incredible sacred sites, and it's going to be quite interesting. On October the 13th, I'm sure a lot of you are aware that the United Nations are hosting their the Adaptation Futures wānanga here in October. And so we're proud to say that we will be hosting one of the living labs here at Ōnuku. So we'll be taking them through, Courtney and I are going to, with the help of Beacon, are going to develop a plan we're going to show you today into a more detailed, a bit more detailed, a more detailed sort of working program. So that sort of work still got to be done, but that is what we're going to be talking about at the wānanga. But we're also going to be taking people out to Takapūneke, because actually it's through our art, through our design, through the way in which we, way in which we create, that we can demonstrate and impart that mātauranga, that connection to whenua, and talk about, where we want, not just the past, but where we want to go into the future through art and design. So Takapūneke is going to be quite an important part of that kōrero, to weave these threads together. We're here to create a more resilient future for our mokopuna. We're also here, how can we also think about the role that art and design also play in that way in which we communicate? How can we connect with people? So a few key facts from those that are not here. Also, I just want to say, I know there's I can see a few faces in the room that have seen most of this presentation before, so bear with. So Akaroa Harbour catchment is approximately 164 kilometres square, and it's got a very small population, one of which swells very quickly during the summer months. It boasts a high level of biodiversity, and a lot of you that will be familiar with the unique geology of the system. Akaroa, or Banks Peninsula, was severed from the mainland for millions of years, so there is a real uniqueness here, unique species that are found nowhere else. Obviously we've got some superstars that dwell in the harbour here, the hoiho and also the Hector's dolphin. Pretty proud of these species. There's obviously many others, and due to the efforts of the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust and others, local farmers and large-scale ecological restorations that have occurred over the last while have landed us with a great Indigenous cover of around about 24%. We can also thank the Farley wool market for that as well. But that, that compared to the biodiversity of wider Canterbury, we're off to a pretty good start. But that, having said that, and one of the things that we have talked a lot about with ECAN through their, through the work that they're doing on their revised regional policy statement, is that biodiversity targets are almost irrelevant, really. We do need them, but they need to be relevant to that area. So even 24% here is not enough because of the type of soils that we've got. They wash down those streams. The streams are short, steep, so everything washes down. The soils are loaded with phosphates. So that is, we still have a hell of a lot of work to do. And, we would like to see this whenua a little bit more like what my grandkids, my children's tipuna saw when they came here. A lot more abundance. So yeah, we do have a lot more to do. Industries here are largely tourism. That's a significant part of the economy, marine farming, of which Ōnuku is part of. Obviously meat farming. There's also a lot of boutique industries that are centred around food, such as wine and so forth, and olives, which is super cool. So we are still an abundant basket, even if we cast our contemporary lens over that. Akaroa Harbour was renowned from early times, as I said, for the quantity and abundance of mahangakai, of which we still practice today. So Ōnuku is really renowned for the way in which it manakis, the way in which it looks after its manuhiri, the way in which we manaki largely comes out of, depending on the, did anybody come here for Waitangi? Did anybody attend the Waitangi celebrations here? Well, that you would have seen there that you would have seen exactly how Ōnuku whānau put it on, for their manuhiri. doesn't matter who that manuhiri is and how our political views might very much differ. But it is what we serve up, particularly for those big hui and wānanga, is what we harvest out of the moana. So the harbour is really key, and it's very much impacted on all the land use around it, as you all know. And so, and also the way in which that knowledge in terms of the practice of mahinga kai, how that is handed down to future generations, is a really key part. So our kids here often get out on the boats and help. They're often in the kitchen helping. So they, that knowledge is very much alive, and we can't manaki our manuhiri if we've got nothing to manaki them with. It impacts on the mana of Ōnuku. So that's why we work so hard to try and, to create and ensure that future generations and us here today, have that ability to manaki. But we have got some really big challenges. Through climate change, we all know that a lot of climate change through sea level rise is going to impact on a lot of small settlements around this harbour. They're all quite low lying. Groundwater rise is will also be an issue that will impact on our natural habitats, on mahinga kai, and our freshwater systems. Access is going to be a huge issue. State Highway 75 is super low lying, so we are already starting to think about coastal infrastructure, coastal erosion and sedimentation, risk of algae blooms. The list goes on. Ocean warming and acidification is a huge issue, a very, very big concern. We are looking at how kelp farming might be able to support and reduce the impact of those things. Changes in rainfall are a very big concern. We already have huge water shortages here. We're very much reliant on water as it falls out of the sky to land in the cracks and above the hills, and then that comes down through the streams, the rivers, and into the aquifers. So if that rain doesn't come in, there's not a lot going on. So we do know that the existing water restrictions and issues are only going to be exacerbated as the climate continues to warm. Flooding, we're already experiencing that, particularly within the township of Akaroa. And food security is a huge issue nationally, worldwide, and obviously, increased temperatures. So all of these things are really quite critical. So what we did back in 2019, Ōnuku held their first wānanga to develop a mahinga kai management plan for Akaroa Harbour. We identified at that point a range of aspirations and what we wanted this management plan to include, but we then, not long after that, we really started to really understand that actually climate change was really at the core of this, and that really needed to be more the focus. And so in 2001, we identified that we had the opportunity to extend the purpose of this plan, which is the idea of the mahinga kai management plan, to integrate climate change. And we wanted it to be an example of a kaitiaki mana whenua-led climate change adaptation mitigation plan that's centred on mahinga kai. So if we kind of say, the goal is abundance, it helps you to make your decisions. And so we wanted it to be whānau focused, whānau friendly, to be more about the journey than the plan, and to do the do while we were planning. So I guess what we didn't want to do is to call in some experts, to do us a climate change adaptation plan that then nobody reads. So we kind of felt that actually going on the journey, with whānau and actually doing the doing, whilst we're talking, was a way more effective way to engage with people. We've also got a lot of whānau who kind of like, I'm not going to say non-believers, it would be a bit harsh, but certainly, don't really, climate change is a tricky subject. I'm finding myself like not getting invited to parties so much, you know? It is kind of like you start on that and kind of, you know, some people like go, oh, you know, you're just getting boring now. But it's you know, you do, so how do you keep people engaged? And, you know, how do you make it relevant to them? And, you know, and also get people to think about how it's impacting them at home, how it's impacting them financially, all of these things. And I know we're here to talk about catchment plans, and we'll get there. We'll show you how our idea of wrapping it all up. So the first thing that we did anyway was to develop a framework. So we wanted a, we kind of, as you can see, there's a little love heart in the middle there. That's really, the love heart represents our whānau and resilience and water. So we wanted to ensure that if we kind of think about health, well-being and whānau resilience, then we can kind of see all the interconnected components that sit around it. So we've got some mitigation goals. That is a lot of the work that we will be doing and talking about over the next few days. It's really, you know, a lot of that sits within the catchment work. Adaptation goals, really understanding what those big risks are and what we can do about them. Our ongoing responsibility as kaitiaki, that's continuing, you know, we've been, I don't know if some of you might be aware that we have, you know, been working on the Akaroa wastewater project for quite some time now, and, you know, it's really important for us to ensure that, you know, to reduce the amount of contaminants going into the harbour. So there's multiple projects that sit under that are ongoing, all interconnected. And also the importance of knowledge. So knowledge, rangatahi, we're talking about, you know, how we build our understanding of these systems. And with a lot of whānau too, and a lot of our rangatahi, you know, not everyone's got environmental degrees, right? So, so not everyone's a scientist. And so they kind of, how do we start to build our understanding, our collective knowledge? So that we identified as being quite critical, a very critical component. And we do know that a collective approach, integrating mātauranga Māori and local place-based knowledge, fosters community resilience and well-being. So we're not so that you're aware, we're not doing this in isolation of the community. We'd probably have more community involved if we weren't battling against most of them to do with Akaroa wastewater right now. But it was, we do have some community in the room now, but it's important that we are all, it's all hands on deck, that we're all in the waka, you know, rowing that together. So that's critical. And also as we hold as we've had our whānau, and we'll show you some of the images of that, you know, as you know, with the community involved, our rangatahi, our tamariki, our whānau, our experts, you know, we bring everyone together, and that's when we start to share, and that's by sharing that knowledge, you're actually empowering those that maybe don't have that same scientific knowledge that you've got. You're handing that, you know, it's you know, you're passing some of that on. And by empowering others, then they can actually do the right thing and make the difference. So under the umbrella of Te Kore a Te Ko, we've got multiple programs that we're running. Some of these are now officially merged, so this diagram's a little bit outdated. But so Te Kore a Te Ko, one of them sits around the work that we're doing around kelp farming. That's research feasibility planning. The other one is our climate change adaptation planning, which is what I'm talking about now. And also we've been working with Environment Canterbury and with EOS through the Y connection on a mātauranga Māori stream monitoring program. That's about we've selected 4 streams. Initially we had this great idea to do all of them, and then we realised that was just not even slightly feasible. So we've got 4 representative streams that we will be following, gathering their data, taking our kids down. Whenever we hold one of these wānanga, it's always with, you know, we also get down with the streams and do the monitoring and get the kids down there, and they love it. So it is starting to build up that data, and I did have a meeting the other day with Turunanga and their comms and GIS geeks, and they've got these little apps now that we can download. We can start adding our data into the app. So I was going to it's one of the things I want to talk to you guys about. So, and then we have also got we're part of the Kākano program. That's also getting some māra into our whānau's homes. So, and we've done a lot of work up here. Last winter we planted a little mini orchard. We want to build on that. I think those trees are still alive. And then we've got, and also marakai, so we just got a tunnel house. We're just ramping up to start to produce a bit more of our own kai. Food security needs to be front of mind with everything that you do as well. Also supporting whānau to get those māra into their own homes so they can start producing at home, baby steps. Recloaking Takapūneke, that's our ongoing environmental restoration work. Our focus has been on Takapūneke, that's the wahitapu I talked to you about. Last Mātariki we did do a planting day and we'll continue to do that. And we are wanting to ramp that side of what we do up. So this, if Rick Tainui, our chairperson, was here, he would talk to this slide. It just really shows you the interconnectedness of the different things that we're looking at. And he's been doing a lot of work around blue carbon and looking at really that kind of comes into climate change mitigation really and adaptation. Looking at some of the some of the ways in which our natural environment and also then adding new environments such as new kelp farms or potentially additional salt marshes, additional oyster reefs and so forth, how they themselves can capture that carbon. So one of the first things we did was really to identify, why it was important, why we must act now. We all know that climate change is the greatest threat to the natural environment and to the societies of our globe. We need to prepare now. Our dollar spent today is what, $7 saved tomorrow. And also we know, and we've heard that quoted already, by restoring and working on our natural systems, the healthier more, and that's one thing that Shelley talked a lot about at our last wānanga, the healthier our natural systems are, the more capable they'll be at adapting to the change. And also the importance of working together, collaborative approach, integrating, as we've talked about, community knowledge, local place-based knowledge, and also mātauranga Māori. So the very first wānanga that we held, which was January 2004, it was the beginning of last year, wasn't it? Yeah, very beginning. We kind of focused more on whānau. So here we kind of, and we made, and one of the things that we've done, which has been really, really successful, is that we have, we've played games, and I don't know about you guys, but once there's skin in the game and once there are prizes available, people get quite competitive. So we played a game, and everyone was given a little whare, and they had and a booklet of lots of ideas of how to make your own home more resilient, and getting into the idea of what, how you can be more responsive and reducing your own carbon footprint. So that kind of, so that was amazing. Some of the outcomes of that were just fantastic. So that's still, we haven't done it yet. What we want to is collate that. I know that Christchurch City Council are developing their own kind of resilience toolkit for people's homes. So we're wanting to work with them and add our stuff into theirs, because I'm sure they didn't come up with nearly as many whiz-bang ideas as what we did. Oh, my presentation's not there. Oh no, here we go. I'm missing a whole lot of slides. I'm not quite sure what happened there. Is that not even... Maybe they just didn't come over. Oh yeah, okay. Yep, I'll stop from there. All right. Yeah, that's weird. Okay. So our big idea was to develop an integrated catchment management and climate change adaptation plan for Akaroa Harbour, based on the concept of kaitiaki, from mountains to the sea. So the plan will focus on mahinga kai and biodiversity, aiming to achieve large-scale outcomes for both climate change adaptation and environmental sustainability. So we developed a, so the idea is by using catchment methodology and breaking the catchments down into sub-catchments, because each sub-catchment has got its own story, each stream's got its own identity, its own issues, and its own communities. So by breaking it down into those sub-catchments, we're able to get, support the different and develop a series of sub-catchment groups. It's about getting the community involved and everybody working collectively towards, the development of their sub-catchment plan, but working under the umbrella of one vision, working under and sharing that knowledge collectively. So that's pretty much, and my slides have just completely vanished. No, they're not there, they're gone. Okay, so that's all right. That kind of gives you a bit of an idea. I'll see if I can land on something, then maybe just open it up to questions. The other thing too that we... Yeah, okay, thank you. Okay, does anybody have any questions? No? Yes?
That's hugely inspiring and ambitious, so thank you, and great with the different layers you've got in it. I was just curious, in terms of the wider take-up of Akaroa community and local farmers, what kind of engagement have you had from them?
So what we're going to do is to use the Takapūneke sub-catchment as our pilot. So that is, and you've got Chris here, who's we're going to learn a bit more about what the Takapūneke community have been doing. But that is, and I'm thinking, so there's been various interests. We do have some great guys across the harbour from the French farm sub-catchment who are ready to go as well. So we've got two groups that are already established that are good to go. With Akaroa Township, we're talking to the Akaroa Area School. Perhaps that is something that we manage and deliver with them. So, it's about, we are still, Courtney, do you want to, you've probably been a bit more involved in some of those other groups?
There's one in whānau, French farm, Takapūneke. We've got some interested parties in the other sub-catchments. I think we've got maybe 7 of the 9 sub-catchments with sort of interested sub-catchment champions, as we kind of like to call it. And that's a mixture of farmers, batch owners, locals and that sort of thing. So we've had a few days where we've kind of had a stall for Ōnuku at a couple of A&P shows on the peninsula. And that's just kind of showcasing and getting the project out there a bit more, and we've actually been able to establish more connection and communication with people that didn't know about the project. So I think at this stage it's kind of, how many people can we connect to? And lots of stakeholder interest as well from regional council, city council, and a few other entities as well. So
so we have been working with Department of Commerce. Like when we hold the wānanga, we've got Environment Canterbury here, we've got different politicians, community groups. We do the big call out, and last time we had some scientists from whenua, as well as the Banks Peninsula Conservation Trust. They've been quite critical with this. So we're working with a couple of the guys there who have helped. So they will also be working. So they will be working more directly with the landowners in terms of helping them, with their, their farm management plans and so forth. So we've got, we've kind of pulled in the different groups. We'll do different aspects of it. What the big thing we've got to do next is really to develop that work plan, and also then provide some idea of. We have scoped out what that content is, but the work plan will take that into a lot more detail, give examples of what we're talking about, because with a lot of climate change adaptation planning, it is a lot of it's based on, looking at timelines and possible scenarios, your dynamic pathway systems, which we will need to do that, but we want to also to do it a little bit more spatially. So actually that way we kind of bring in, you know, the biodiversity projects as well, weave them all together. And also we want to look at things like introducing, say, wetlands into different communities, because as you just, you know, you remember that I noted one of our big risks is lack of water, lack of potable water. So by having basically, you know, so starting to kind of put a peg in the ground and a stamp on the plan for, even though we're not going to go into the detail of what that is, we'll be finding somewhere that's feasible, and this is how it will work. So what we're trying to do is to pull those things together. So we'll be looking into the future, and you know, and let's say, and you know, when we bring in those dynamic pathways, you know, something like wetlands, I mean, they serve multiple services in terms of being able to support with firefighting, you know, they're basically detention holding tanks for fresh water that then get filtered and reused. You know, they provide habitat, they capture those sediments, you know, they form multiple functions. So how can we locate them in places where they can perform those functions in the best possible, you know, the best possible way? But we also have got a very challenging topography. So, you know, so that's the kind of thing. We may also be looking at future areas for housing, because a lot of the low-lying areas will be lost over time. So, and one of the big things we're looking at with Chris is really the early conversion of low-lying areas to salt marsh. You know, because where salt marsh provides an incredible buffer against storm surge, it also helps to protect the land in behind. So, you know, there's a lot of low-lying spots where we're starting to trial, and we're looking at Takapūneke as you know, to trial that out first. We do need a bit of scientific help on that one, but that's the sort of thing that we're looking at doing. So it is quite, you know, it is quite multi-dimensional, and you know, we're also looking to, you know, we want to be talking to communities about planting food forests and collective, you know, places where, you know, and also support more diversity within farming practices, all of that stuff. So yeah, we're quite, you know, so we want to, there's so many different threads, and what we're trying to do here is, you know, trying to, you know, to merge two things that we do, that's catchment planning with, you know, climate change adaptation, to see how we can get things knitted in, and with community resilience as well. You know, all of that supports community resilience. So yeah, and this image here is just showing you some of the stuff that we have done. This is the stream, this is the Mātauranga Māori monitoring program. Yeah, this has been super fun, hasn't it? And at the last one, we focused a little bit more on community scale climate change planning and adaptation, and again broke people into groups and mixed everybody up so that everyone had the opportunity to learn from each other, and to think about not just yourself, not just your home and your community today, but actually think about future generations and what, you know, what are some of the impacts of climate change on them. And so, yeah, often we think, oh well, it's not really going to impact on me, you know, I'm good. But actually, you know, what about your ōnuku? How's it got an impact on them? So, and also thinking about economic impacts, cost of food, cost of power, cost of insurance, no insurance, you know, all of these things to get people just to jump out of there and start taking a little bit more responsibility, hopefully. This one was seen. Okay, so we just did this, a bit of a, you know, an idea of the different things that we could look at. And I've talked to you about the wetlands, and we've touched on the use of oyster reefs and salt marshes to capture sediments, filter water, increase habitat, rā-rā. Also looking at new biodiversity and recreational experiences too, and this kind of brings in, you know, as one door closes, another door opens, how also can we benefit from this economically, you know, and is there an opportunity for economic sustainability in terms of local, developing a stronger local economy? Maybe we develop an Akaroa eco brand, look at more ecotourism. And then also looking a bit more creatively around how we produce food. we want to bring in technology as well. And this just, again, is a repeat, just showing you some of the outcomes or benefits, you know, increased Indigenous biodiversity, enhanced mauri, enhanced mahangakai value, food and water security, resilient communities, economic resilience. And that's the map that you saw just a minute ago. So that's kind of where we're currently at. We will be looking at, and we've got the Kaipara Moana Harbour lady here. I can't remember where. There, okay. What we did, so we have been quite inspired by what the Kaipara Moana team have been doing, and in terms of how you then share that information. You know, they've got a website which has got all the resources for local community groups to be able to access funding streams and so forth. And so we kind of see that something similar is what we'd want to do. So a little bit around our methodology. We're looking at forming 8 to 9 sub-catchment groups. And we will create a technical advisory group to actually produce the plans. And we will be also developing a steering group, that's our governance group, that will consist of the leaders of all of our different partners. And a little bit around the project structure. We've just started to touch on a lot of this. You'll see here there's a lot of, it's very much bringing everybody into play and working collaboratively. And that's it, really. Yeah. I'm pleased the rest of the presentation went.